The wind howled through the ruins of the city, carrying with it whispers that seemed older than time itself. The locals had a name for this place, a name they spoke only in hushed tones, as though saying it too loudly might invite something sinister into their lives. For outsiders, it was just another abandoned settlement, a scar of history left behind. But to those who lived in the surrounding villages, this was no ordinary ghost town. They called it the City of the Forgotten. Legend said that once, centuries ago, it had been a thriving place of merchants, craftsmen, and priests. Its cobbled streets were alive with laughter, its stone houses filled with families. But then came the plague, the fire, and the curse. Some said a priest made a pact with something that should never have been summoned. Others whispered of a woman who was burned at the stake, and with her final breath, she cursed the city to eternal darkness. No one really knew which story was true. But what everyone agreed upon was this: no one who dared to stay in the city after dark came back unchanged. Some vanished entirely. Others returned, but they were never the same again. Haunted eyes, trembling voices, shadows clinging to them like scars. And tonight, I was about to test that legend myself. The hook. Did you know, my voice cracked slightly as I lifted the camera toward the crumbling city gates, that this place is known as the most haunted city in Europe? Locals say if you stay here for a single night, you'll never escape the curse. And for the next 24 hours, I am going to find out if that's true, or if it's all just another legend. The red light of the camera blinked back at me. My backpack was heavy with supplies: bottled water, a flashlight, spare batteries, a sleeping bag, and the one thing I swore I wouldn't to use unless absolutely necessary, an old crucifix that a villager had pressed into my palm before I left. "Take it," the old woman had whispered, her fingers trembling. "It may not save you, but it might remind them you're still alive." Her words echoed in my mind as I stepped past the rusted iron gates. The city swallowed me whole. The introduction. By daylight, the ruins seemed almost peaceful. The streets were lined with the skeletons of houses, their walls crumbling but still standing tall against the wind. Broken windows stared at me like hollow eyes. Ivy crawled across the stones, trying to reclaim what time had stolen. The air was thick with silence, a silence so complete it made my footsteps sound unnaturally loud. "This is it," I said into the camera, forcing a smile. "I'm officially trapped here for 24 hours. The rules are simple. I can't leave until the timer runs out. No help, no signal. Just me in this city." My voice echoed against the walls, bouncing back at me like mockery. The challenge was supposed to be fun, thrilling. But even now, in the daylight, I could feel it, that heavy, invisible weight pressing down on me. The city wasn't empty. It was watching. Somewhere in the distance, a crow cawed. I set up my watch, tapped the timer, and the countdown began. 24 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. The first signs. The deeper I walked, the colder the air became. It wasn't just the temperature dropping, it was as if the warmth itself was being drained from my skin. My breath puffed out in small clouds, even though it wasn't winter. Every corner revealed something stranger. A child's doll lay face down in the dirt, its porcelain cracked, one glass eye missing. A door swung slowly on broken hinges, though there was no wind. And in the middle of the square, I found something that made my stomach twist. It was a chair. Just a single wooden chair, placed upright in the exact center of the plaza. On its seat, someone had carved words into the wood, crude and uneven. "Don't sit." I filmed it from every angle, whispering to the camera. This wasn't in the history books. Who left this here? And why? No answer came. Just the creak of the chair as it shifted slightly, as though it were waiting. Night approaches by late evening. The sun dipped behind the ruined spires of the church. The shadows grew long, stretching like claws across the stones. I set up camp inside one of the larger houses. Its roof was half collapsed, but the walls still offered some shelter. I unrolled my sleeping bag, lit a single lantern, and checked the timer. 16 hours, 45 minutes, and 0 seconds. The night hadn't even begun, and already I could feel the city closing in around me. Somewhere outside, a sound echoed. Footsteps. I froze. Slow, deliberate, one after another, like someone walking through gravel. But when I looked out the shattered window, there was nothing. Just empty streets bathed in moonlight. My pulse hammered in my ears. "This is fine," I whispered to myself. "It's just the wind, or maybe an animal." But deep down, I knew it wasn't the wind, and I knew I wasn't alone. The night crept in like a slow poison. I sat against the cracked wall of the abandoned house, clutching my lantern as if its dim light could protect me from the weight of the shadows. The city was silent, yet it wasn't the kind of silence that comforted. It was the kind that listened. Every creak of wood, every whisper of the wind felt deliberate, intentional. I checked the timer again. 15 hours, 52 minutes, and 9 seconds. The challenge had barely begun, and already I could feel the city pressing against me, daring me to stay. The first omen, the footsteps came again, louder this time. I turned the camera toward the window, zooming in across the empty street. The beam of my flashlight cut through the dark, sliding across broken doors, shattered windows, and piles of rubble. Nothing, but then I noticed it. The doll. The same porcelain doll I had seen earlier in the day. It was sitting upright now, propped neatly against the wall across the street. When I'd last seen it, it had been face down in the dirt, and this time, both of its glass eyes were staring at me. I swallowed hard. Okay, guys. I don't know if I'm losing it, but I swear this doll wasn't here before. Someone must have moved it. I panned the camera left, right, scanning every shadow, every crack in the street, but there was no one. Just me, or at least that's what I told myself. Exploring the streets, I couldn't sit still. My curiosity was stronger than my fear, or maybe my fear was fueling it. I grabbed the lantern and stepped into the street. The cobblestones crunched under my boots, echoing far louder than they should have in the empty night. The doll sat motionless. Its cracked face gleamed in the lantern light. I crouched down slowly, whispering into the camera. This thing looks like it's been here for decades, but why would it move on its own? My fingers hovered inches from it. Then a sound broke the silence. Tap, 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 from behind me. I spun around, the lantern swinging wildly. The sound had come from one of the houses, 3 distinct knocks, like someone tapping from inside the wall. I froze. The doll slipped from my hand and landed on the cobblestones with a hollow thud. The knocking stopped. The warnings. As I backed away from the house, my foot struck something half buried in the dirt. I bent down, brushing away the dust. It was a wooden sign, splintered with age. The letters carved into it were faint but still legible. Don't look up. I frowned, reading the words out loud. Don't look up? What the hell does that mean? As if on cue, a cold gust of wind rushed down the street, almost snuffing out my lantern. Goosebumps prickled across my skin. And against my better judgment, I looked up. The church tower loomed above me. Its spire was broken, jagged against the night sky. But it wasn't the tower itself that made my stomach drop. It was the figure. A pale shape stood at the very top, motionless. Its dress billowed in the wind, though no wind touched me. And even from that distance, I could feel its gaze pressing into me, heavy and cold. The lantern flickered violently. When I looked again, the figure was gone. The chase my instincts screamed at me to run back to the safety of the house. But before I could move, the sound of footsteps exploded around me. Not just one set, dozens, boots against cobblestone. bare feet scraping the dirt, quick, frantic, circling. I spun in every direction, the camera jerking with me. The streets were empty, yet the sound grew louder, closer. It was as if the city itself had come alive, rushing in from every alley, every broken doorway. I bolted. The lantern swung violently in my grip as I sprinted through the streets. My breath came in ragged gasps, heart pounding against my ribs. Behind me, the footsteps followed. I didn't dare look back. Refuge at last, I stumbled into another building, a narrow, leaning structure that looked like it might collapse any second. I slammed the door shut behind me and pressed my back against it, gasping for breath. The footsteps stopped. Silence fell again. I held the lantern high, scanning the room. The air smelled of mold and rot. The walls were covered in strange markings, symbols carved deep into the plaster. Circles, crosses, spirals. Some were smeared in what looked like ash, others in something darker. At the far end of the room stood a mirror. Its frame was broken, the glass cracked down the middle. But even through the crack, I could see my reflection staring back at me. Only it wasn't quite me. My reflection was smiling. And I wasn't. Countdown, I staggered back, knocking over a chair. My lantern flickered, then steadied. The reflection moved again, its lips forming words I couldn't hear. I squeezed my eyes shut, whispering, "This isn't real. This isn't real." When I opened them again, the mirror was empty. No reflection at all. My hands trembled as I lifted the camera. Guys, I don't know what's happening here, but something isn't right. This city, it's alive and it doesn't want me here. I checked the timer, 12 hours, 4 minutes, and 27 seconds. Still 12 hours to go. And I was already unraveling. The rules revealed the air in the broken house was suffocating. My lantern hissed, struggling against the darkness that pressed in from every corner. I leaned against the wall, forcing myself to breathe, and turned the camera toward my face. My voice shook as I spoke. Okay. We're not even halfway through the challenge yet. 11 hours left. And I think I'm beginning to understand why nobody stays here overnight. This isn't just a ghost town. It feels like the whole city is aware, like it's watching, like it's testing me. That's when I noticed the carvings again. The walls weren't random, they were rules. Symbols scratched deep into plaster, accompanied by faint words in a language I almost didn't recognize. Some were Latin, others in Old Scots, but one phrase stood out, burned into the wood above the fireplace. Obey, or be taken, the rules of the city. The rules, one by one, as I traced my fingers over the carvings. The words shifted in my vision, translating themselves inside my head. Do not sit in the chair. Do not look up. Do not answer when they call your name. Leave an offering at dawn, or never leave at all. A chill ran down my spine. These weren't warnings. They were instructions, rules of survival written by those who came before me. And most of them were already broken. I had looked up. The whisper, the silence stretched thin, then snapped. My name. It was a whisper, faint but sharp, drifting in through the cracks of the house. My blood turned cold. The third rule burned in my mind. Do not answer when they call your name. My name. This time it was closer, right outside the door. I clamped a hand over my mouth, forcing myself to stay quiet. The whisper circled the house, moving from one window to the next. A woman's voice, soft, coaxing. Come out. I've been waiting. The lantern dimmed, shadows stretching across the walls. The mirror in the corner rattled. And then, slowly, a pale hand pressed against the glass from the other side. The woman in white, I couldn't stop myself. I looked. The mirror fogged as though from breath, and behind the cracked glass she stood. The woman in white. Her face was blurred, shifting like smoke, but her eyes were sharp and endless, pulling me in. Her lips moved slowly, forming words I couldn't hear. Then, without warning, she slammed her palm against the glass. The mirror split wider, shards dropping to the floor. And through the gap, her whisper slid into the room, clear as death. "You shouldn't have looked." The escape, the walls groaned. The carvings pulsed faintly, glowing red. The air thickened, pressing against my chest. I snatched the lantern and bolted through the door, sprinting into the night. The streets twisted unnaturally, every corner turning back into itself. The city was reshaping, closing around me like a maze. Behind me, the whisper followed. My name. Every time I resisted the urge to respond, the voice grew sharper, angrier. Windows slammed shut as I passed. Doors creaked open to reveal nothing but darkness. And then I saw her. At the far end of the square, standing beneath the broken church tower. Her dress glowed faintly, white against the black. She raised her hand slowly, beckoning. The breaking point, I stumbled backward, refusing to move closer. The timer beeped faintly on my wrist. 8 hours, 14 minutes, and 6 seconds. Still 8 hours to go. The woman tilted her head, eyes gleaming with something between sorrow and hunger. Then, in a voice that shook the stones themselves, she whispered, "Leave or stay forever." The ground beneath me cracked, cobblestones splitting apart. From the gaps, pale hands reached out, clawing at my ankles. I screamed, kicking free, stumbling toward another alley. The city roared around me, walls trembling, doors slamming, glass shattering. It wasn't just haunted, it was alive. And it wanted me to choose. Into the maze, the city's streets were endless. Narrow alleys twisted like veins, leading into wider squares that felt eerily staged like theater sets waiting for actors who would never return. Everywhere I turned, there were signs of life long gone, half-burnt candles melted into stone, doors swinging on rusted hinges, tables set with plates and cups, untouched for decades. But what chilled me most was the dust, or rather, the lack of it. Every surface looked freshly abandoned, as if the people had left only hours ago, yet the silence said otherwise. The tavern, I pushed open the door of a crumbling tavern, the wood moaning in protest. Inside, the air reeked of stale ale and ash. Chairs were knocked over, tankards scattered across the floor. On the wall hung a painting faded but unmistakable. It was the woman in white, her image stretched across the canvas, her eyes following me no matter where I stood. Beneath her face, scratched into the frame, were words, "The Lady of the Tower watches all who enter." I whispered into the camera, "So she isn't just a ghost, she's a legend here. Maybe the reason this place is cursed." The moment I said the word cursed, the lantern sputtered, nearly going out. The legend of the lady in the tavern's back room. I found something stranger still, a ledger. Its pages, though brittle, were still intact. Each page listed names, dates, and causes of death. Some were simple: fever, accident, childbirth. But others were terrifyingly specific. Dragged into the tower by the lady. Spoke to the voice, never returned, looked up, eyes gone. And the last page, it bore no date. Just one line, scrawled in jagged ink: "She always finds the outsider." The alley of echoes, I left the tavern in a rush, heart pounding. The streets felt tighter now, walls leaning inward as if the city itself was closing in on me. That's when I stumbled into the alley. At first it seemed empty, just another narrow stretch of cobblestone. But then the sound began. Footsteps. They didn't follow me, they mirrored me. Every move I made, the sound echoed back a second later. Walk, stop, walk, stop. I tested it, clapping my hands. The sound clapped back, but 3 times, not once. I whispered, "Is someone mocking me?" And the alley answered, repeating my whisper in dozens of voices, overlapping, childlike, guttural, ancient. "Is someone mocking me?" The house of portraits I ran until I found another building, a large decayed mansion at the end of the street. Its windows were shattered, curtains flapping in the wind like pale hands. Inside, the walls were lined with portraits. Dozens of them, hundreds, stretching into the dark halls. Each face was painted with painstaking detail. Men, women, children, but as I passed them, I froze. The last few portraits looked familiar. Too familiar. They were of me. Not one, but many. Me standing in the street, me holding the lantern, me looking into the mirror. Paintings of moments that had happened only hours ago. The final portrait was me, lying on the cobblestones. My eyes closed, my throat torn open. The paint was still wet. The bell, the sound shattered the silence. A bell, loud, deep, echoing through the city. Once, twice, 3 times. I knew it had come from the broken church tower, and with every toll, the city seemed to shudder. Windows slammed shut, doors locked themselves, whispers rose from the ground. The bell tolled 7 times, then stopped. And in the silence that followed, a woman's laughter drifted through the streets. Soft, gentle, deadly. Countdown, I checked the timer, my hands trembling. 5 hours, 45 minutes, and 12 seconds. Still nearly 6 hours left. 6 hours in a city that was swallowing me whole. I whispered into the camera, my voice breaking. This place isn't abandoned. It's a trap, a stage. And I think the lady is the one pulling the strings. The lantern dimmed again. And somewhere high above, I swore I saw her figure at the tower, watching. Always watching. The midnight mark the church bell struck midnight. The sound was heavier than before, each toll shaking dust from the broken rooftops, each echo vibrating in my ribs. And then the city. Breathed. I swear I felt it. The ground shifted underfoot. The air sucked inward like a lung. For a heartbeat, everything was silent. Then the whispers began. Not one voice. Hundreds, thousands, layered together, murmuring from the walls, the cobblestones, the air itself. The haunted city was awake. The shifting streets I ran, desperate to find shelter, but the streets no longer followed logic. Corners twisted back on themselves. A straight alley stretched endlessly, then folded in half like a mirror snapping shut. Doors led nowhere, windows opened to black voids. I turned a corner and froze. The tavern. The same tavern I had left an hour ago. I checked the door frame. Yes, it was the same cracked wood. The same painting of the lady. This city wasn't just alive, it was playing with me. Shadows that moved, I ducked into another alley, hugging the lantern to my chest. That's when I saw them. Figures in the dark, dozens of them. Standing still at the end of the street, their faces blurred, their bodies barely outlined by the glow. At first they didn't move, they only watched. Then, in unison, they tilted their heads. A sound rolled through the alley like bones, snapping in rhythm. One by one, the shadows stepped forward. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping the lantern. My heart thundered in my chest. Stay away, stay away. But the shadows didn't listen. They closed in slowly, as if savoring my fear. The clock tower, the bell tolled again, 13 times this time, though midnight should only strike 12. With each toll, the shadows froze, then advanced. By the 13th toll, they were only feet away. And then mercifully, they vanished. Not with a scream. Not with a rush. They simply blinked out of existence, leaving only the echo of their steps. The mirror trap breathless, I ducked into the nearest building, a tailor's shop. Dusty mannequins stood scattered across the floor, draped in rotting cloth. And on the far wall, a mirror waited. It wasn't cracked this time. It was clean. Too clean. The reflection showed me, lantern in hand, shaking. But then, something shifted. The mirror me smiled. I didn't. The reflection tilted its head, lifting the lantern higher, revealing something behind me. Slowly, heart pounding, I turned. Nothing, just mannequins. But when I looked back at the mirror, my reflection was gone. The glass was empty. The fire that wasn't Panic drove me back outside. But as soon as I stepped onto the street, I froze again. The entire city was burning. Flames roared from windows, smoke coiled into the black sky, heat licked against my face. I stumbled backward, shielding my eyes, and then, in a blink, it was gone. No fire, no smoke, just silence. The cobblestones beneath me were cool to the touch. The city had shown me a memory, a death. Maybe its own. The lady appears at 247 Amer chicane. The lady of the tower. No longer a whisper, no longer a shadow in glass this time. She stood in the flesh. Pale, veiled, her dress dragging across the stones as if soaked in water. Her face was hidden, but her voice was clear. You are mine now. Every lantern in the city flickered out. Only hers glowed faintly, a sickly white light that painted her figure in the dark. I stumbled backward, but the streets closed in behind me, bricks grinding as alleys sealed themselves. There was nowhere to run. Her veil lifted slowly, and beneath it, darkness. Not a face, not features. Just endless, swirling black. The void leaned closer, pulling at my skin, my breath, my very thoughts. The breaking point, the timer beeped faintly on my wrist. 3 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. The darkest hour. And the city wasn't just haunting me anymore. It was consuming me. The pull of the tower after 3 a.m., the city was no longer silent. The air trembled with low chanting, voices echoing through the streets like waves of invisible choirs. Every sound seemed to point toward one place. The church tower, that same tower whose bell had struck 13. That same tower where I had glimpsed the lady staring down at me. I knew I shouldn't go there. Every instinct screamed, stay away. But the streets bent beneath my feet, twisting, forcing me closer. It was as though the entire city wanted me inside that tower. The ruined church, the church loomed before me, its once grand doors rotting, stone saints cracked and faceless. Above it, the tower pierced the sky like a broken spear. I pushed open the doors. Inside, pews lay shattered. The altar was scorched black, and every stained glass window had been smashed. Yet when the lantern's glow touched the walls, I saw faint murals still clinging to the stone. Murals of her. The lady, painted in white robes, her face always veiled, always turned away. In some she stood beside villagers, in others she dragged them into the tower. And in the final mural, her arms stretched wide over the city, 100 shadowy figures bowing at her feet. The journal behind the altar, I found a small, half-burned chest. Inside was a leather journal, brittle with age. The writing was jagged, desperate. I read aloud softly for the camera. She was not always a ghost. She was flesh and blood. They called her Margaret of the Tower. Condemned for witchcraft, she cursed this city as they bound her to the noose, but the rope did not end her. The tower claimed her. Now she lives between the bells and the shadows, feeding on all who dare to enter. My hands trembled. This wasn't just folklore. This was history. The last entry chilled me most. The curse ends only when the outsider stays willingly. Until then, the lady will always hunt. The choir of the damned, the chanting grew louder. I turned and froze. The pews were no longer empty. Dozens of figures sat silently, heads bowed. Their clothes were ragged, their faces pale and waxy, like corpses posed for prayer. When the bell tolled once more, they lifted their heads in unison, no eyes, just black hollows. And they began to sing. A low, guttural hymn that shook the rafters. The sound pressed into my chest, crushing my breath, filling me with a weight of despair. I stumbled backward, covering my ears, but the hymn wasn't sound anymore, it was inside my skull. The tower ascent, I fled into the tower stairwell, spiraling upward in the dark. Each step echoed like thunder, the hymn rising behind me. Halfway up, I passed mirrors embedded in the wall. Each one showed a version of me running, gasping, lantern flickering. But one reflection didn't match. In that mirror, I wasn't climbing. I was standing still, smiling, waiting, and behind that smiling me, the lady. I smashed the glass with my fist and kept running. The bell room. At the top, the bell loomed enormous, its bronze body cracked but still alive with strange light, and beside it she stood. The lady, her veil drifted as though underwater, her dress dragging across the floor. She turned slowly, raising a pale hand toward me. "You climbed," she whispered. "That means you belong." Her voice wasn't one, it was hundreds, layered together, male and female, child and elder. I backed away, nearly slipping on the stones. "I don't belong here. I'm leaving at dawn." Her laughter rattled the tower. "There's no dawn in my city." Revelation, she moved closer, and for the first time, I saw beneath her veil. It wasn't a void this time. It was a face. Or many faces shifting, merging, screaming silently. The faces of everyone who had ever entered the city, trapped inside her. The journal's words echoed in my head. The outsider must stay willingly. This wasn't just a haunting. It was a prison. A cycle. And I was next. Countdown. The timer on my wrist flickered. 4 hours, 12 minutes, and 45 seconds. Barely 4 hours left. But as her shadow stretched across the stones, swallowing me whole, I realized something terrifying. Time wasn't counting down anymore. It was counting up. The longest hour the journal had warned me. The lady's curse was strongest between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., but the timer on my wrist had betrayed me. It no longer ticked toward freedom. It ticked upward, as though time itself now belonged to her. The city was no longer just haunted. It was alive, and it was starving. The gathering as I stumbled out of the tower, the streets had changed again. Every building leaned inward, windows glowing faintly with ghostly light. The air reeked of smoke and blood, though no fire burned. And then I saw them, hundreds of figures. Shadows of villagers, soldiers, children, all with hollow eyes and waxy skin. They weren't just haunting me anymore. They were waiting. Their heads turned as one, locking onto me. And from every throat came a whisper in unison. "Stay, the chase I ran." My lantern flickered wildly as the crowd surged behind me, their footsteps echoing like drums. No matter where I turned, the streets folded back, forcing me deeper into the city's veins. Every alley ended at a wall. Every corner brought me back to the same square. And in the center of that square, she stood. The lady, her veil lifted in the wind, faces swirling beneath like storm clouds. She raised her arms, and the crowd of shadows froze. "You run," she said softly, "but all roads are mine." The trail of mirrors, the ground cracked beneath me. Cobblestones fell away, revealing a chasm lined with mirrors. I tumbled, landing hard against glass. Each mirror lit up, showing different versions of me. One was screaming. One was hanging from a noose. One was kneeling before the lady, begging. And one was smiling, already part of her choir. The lady's voice filled the void. "Choose. Every soul chooses." I smashed at the glass, desperate to escape, but blood poured from my knuckles, and the reflections only laughed. The 13th bell from above, the bell tower tolled again. Not 12. Not 13, endless. Each strike sent waves of agony through me, bending the mirrors until they shattered one by one. The shards fell upward, defying gravity, swirling into the lady's form until she towered above me, larger than life, her veil stretching across the sky. The showdown, the city itself turned against me. Streets rose like serpents, buildings twisted into claws. I grabbed a shard of mirror, clutching it like a blade. "You will not keep me," I shouted. The lady descended, her arms stretching unnaturally long, her veil whipping around me. The faces within her screamed silently, mouths gaping in eternal terror. I slashed the shard through the air, and for a moment, the lady recoiled. The shard reflected her image back at her, twisting it, splintering it. Her scream shook the entire city, windows exploding, walls crumbling, but it wasn't enough. She surged again, shadows binding my arms, dragging me to my knees. The bargain as darkness consumed me, her voice whispered against my ear, "Stay, and I will give you power beyond men. Stay, and you will never die." The timer on my wrist glowed faintly. 3 hours, 59 minutes, and 45 seconds. 15 seconds left. "Or resist," she whispered, "and your soul will feed my choir forever." I closed my eyes, clutching the shard tighter. The final bell struck. Dawnbreak's light exploded. Not from my lantern, not from fire, from the horizon. The first ray of dawn pierced the city's walls, spilling across the stones like liquid gold. The lady shrieked, her veil burning away, her many faces twisting in agony. The shadows scattered, the city's walls cracking, splitting apart as though the curse itself was unraveling. I collapsed onto the stones, gasping as the light washed over me. The timer flickered one last time, 24 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. Exactly, 24 hours. The cost, but as the city crumbled around me, I heard one final whisper in my ear. "You left your shadow behind." I turned, and in the sunlight, I saw that my shadow wasn't mine anymore. It smiled. The silence after when the light broke, everything stilled. The chanting, the bells, the crowd of hollow-eyed figures gone. The city, once alive with shifting streets and whispering walls, was now silent stone, dead stone. I staggered through the square where the lady had stood. The ground was cracked, the murals shattered, but her presence lingered, like smoke after fire. The final mark. I looked at the timer. It had reset to 0, not counting up, not counting down, just blank. And burned into the skin beneath, it was a faint sigil like the mark I had seen on the murals inside the church. The lady's mark. No matter how much I scrubbed it didn't fade. The way out, for the first time in 24 hours, I found something new. A gate. Massive iron doors at the edge of the city, their hinges rusted, their surface etched with carvings. They hadn't been there before. When I touched them, the doors groaned and swung open, revealing rolling fields bathed in morning sun. Freedom, or so I thought. Outside the walls, I stumbled into the fields, breathing air that didn't taste of ash or rot. The sky stretched wide and blue, the sun warming my face. But the moment I looked back, my heart froze. The city was gone. Not in ruins. Not crumbling, gone. Only empty hills remained where the walls had stood, as though it had never existed. The shadow I walked for hours, following a dirt road that wound toward distant villages. Birds sang. Wind rustled the grass, normal, safe. But every time I glanced down, I saw it. My shadow lagging half a beat behind me. When I stopped, it stopped late. When I lifted my hand, it hesitated. And once, I swear I saw it grin. The village by dusk, I reached a small village. Smoke curled from chimneys, children played in the streets, and life thrived as if untouched by darkness. The villagers welcomed me, offering food and water. They asked where I had come from. I pointed back toward the hills. "There was a city there," I whispered. Their smiles faltered. Silence spread through the room. Finally, an old woman leaned forward. "There's no city there," she said. "Not anymore." Her eyes drifted to my wrist, to the faint sigil burned into my skin. And she crossed herself. The warning that night, the old woman came to me in secret. She placed a candle by my bed and whispered, "You escaped her walls, but you did not escape her claim." I asked what she meant, but she only shook her head. "Pray the dawn always comes for you." Then she left, and I was alone. The final whisper as I drifted into uneasy sleep, I felt a chill crawl over me. And then a voice, soft, familiar, coiling around my thoughts. "You walked free, but freedom is an illusion. My city lives within you now." I bolted upright, heart pounding. The candle had burned out, and on the wall opposite my bed, cast by no light source I could find, was the shadow of the lady, waiting. The return weeks passed. I returned home. My city, my street, my apartment, familiar walls that should have brought peace. But peace never came. At night, I dreamed of cobblestones, of tolling bells, of veils stretching across the sky. And every morning, when I awoke, I found more of those faint sigils etched into my skin, crawling higher like veins of ink. The recording. To make sense of it, I recorded my story. Every detail, the voices, the shadows, the lady. But when I played the footage back, the city was gone. My camera showed empty fields. No cracked murals, no shifting streets, only me stumbling through emptiness. Worse sometimes, another figure flickered behind me. A tall silhouette draped in a veil, always smiling. The lost time. One night, I glanced at my watch. It read 3 a.m., the same hour, the cursed hour. But when dawn came, the time never moved forward. It remained locked at 3. Daylight burned outside, but my clocks were frozen in the lady's hour. The visitors, then came the knocks. Always 3 taps, always at the same time. Always on the inside of the door. When I finally opened it, no one stood there. But across the floor stretched footprints, wet, leading into my home. The journal returns one morning. I found the old journal lying on my desk. The same one I had discovered in the haunted city, but this time the handwriting inside was mine. Page after page filled with words I didn't remember writing. You never left. You are still here. The realization, and that's when I understood. The city hadn't vanished. It had followed me. Every wall, every shadow, every ticking clock. It wasn't my world anymore. It was hers. The final reflection tonight, I write this last entry. The marks now cover both arms, crawling up my neck. My reflection in the mirror lags behind, just like my shadow once did. And sometimes it doesn't move at all. Instead, it tilts its head, smiling. The last words, if you are watching this, if you hear my voice, don't go looking for the city. Don't follow the bells. Don't listen when the lady whispers your name. Because once you enter, you never truly escape. Not after 24 hours. Not after 24 years. Never.